What's up, guys? Welcome to Podcast 412, Fight for Purity. A bold way of looking at challenges that young people are facing. We'll talk about the naked truth of life and how to handle the problems you're thinking but not talking about. So strap in, get ready for another great podcast.
Hey, welcome back to our podcast. The last time we were talking about boundaries when it comes to touch, and we're just going to continue that conversation today, and we're going to elaborate more, I guess, on the boundaries about touch.
Yeah. So something that I wanted to bring up that I kind of goes back to the beginning, but was when you make that decision, like to set boundaries or for purity, one of the things that you have to realize about yourself is that, we're all starting from a place where we're totally selfish. And so just understanding, I think that place, is going to help you, moving forward. Because the biggest battle you're going to encounter is probably going to be really yourself. Because you're the one that's setting boundaries. You're the one that's, they're going to say no. Or you're the one that's going to say, this is the influence that I'm going to allow or the people that I'm going to allow in my life, So, and then, and just knowing that we're all in that place. You're constantly going to battle with just what you want. What feels good, what makes, your heart, skip a beat. Yeah, and so that's the one thing is that if you realize that when you start, that you're going to be sometimes your worst enemy or sometimes your greatest ally. But just understanding that, you're just going to be, you're selfish. We're all selfish, so we're going to start at that place. And then one other thing to consider, the one thing about boundaries is that whenever you see a boundary somewhere, it's because whatever's behind that boundary has value, So, you put a boundary around your house because you're trying to protect your house because that house has value, There's value behind it, And so the one thing that you have to also consider is that you're valuable, That's why you need to set boundaries because you're a valuable person. You're a valuable human being. What you think and how you feel matters, and so you need to protect that, because you're an important person, So I wanted to bring that up because I didn't bring it up in the beginning when we talked about how do you start with purity. So just remember that you're starting from a place where you're selfish. So and then another question was I wanted to ask you guys was that what are some ways that you set boundaries for yourself, that with the opposite, or even with friends, how did you set boundaries? How did you make that, how did people know, okay, there's a line right here that I can't cross, So go ahead, you guys can start, whoever.
You want me to go first? Yeah. Okay. Well, when I was in high school, I had no boundaries. Well, I don't know if you guys remembered, one of the episodes we talked about having a personal bubble. How some people got big bubbles, some people got little bubbles, and I said I have a very little bubble. So I was, and I'm really affectionate. So I was always hugging people and getting all cozy and everything. And and it wasn't anything to me because it's just how I am. But when I realized I had crossed some boundaries with some people, when the hugs were getting a little too cozy, and I realized it in my face when I look at a guy and I'd be like, oh my gosh, if I don't move right now, this guy's gonna try and kiss me. I was like, we need to reset some boundaries. Yes, and then I was going to church and I wanted to strengthen, I guess you could say, or make stronger my relationship with God. And I knew that if I wanted to do that, I needed to get rid of the distraction of boys and everything. And one of the first things I had to do is I had to start setting up boundaries as far as hugs, because I love hugs. I loved it. And it was really hard. It was really hard to not hug people and to hug guys. I had such a hard time with it because I hug everybody. And so guys that I always talked to and that we were friends with, I had to physically be like, no. And it was so hard. So guys would hug me and they'd have their arms around me and I would tense up and I would kind of smile really awkward and I'd get their hand and be like, no, I'm sorry. And then they would ask why. And it's really awkward because then you got to explain yourself. Well, I can't. And not everybody understands why you wouldn't want to hug anybody. You know, people don't understand that now. And, you know, and I didn't know how to explain it myself when back then. I just knew that I couldn't be hugging guys all the time. And I couldn't be like, because you're a distraction, you know, because you're ruining things for me, you know. I had to just, and so for me, it was really hard. I had to actually physically push people away and be like, sorry, no, I can't hug you anymore because it's not good for me. And it was really hard, and it was awkward. It was very awkward, and just out of pure habit, either me or the other person, we'd go in for a hug and be like, sorry, we're not doing that no more. So it was awkward, but it's possible. I do want you to know, like, it's weird, it's hard, and you have to kind of like snap yourself out of it, because like I said, sometimes you're like, never mind. Whoops. So that, like, for me, that was one of the hardest, but the first things that I had to do when it came to boundaries as far as touch. It was really hard for me and really awkward for everybody else involved. So I don't know.
Did it get easier though? Like,
oh yeah.
Like,
yeah.
once you did it, did they react differently to you, or did they treat you differently, or
No.
did your relationship change with them, or
No, with my guy friends, at first, like I said, it was awkward. It was awkward for the first couple of times, I'd say. Like, well, because when I was in high school, you know, you see people like 5 days a week. So I'd say maybe for like the first 2 days, it was awkward. And then after that, it was just like, oh yeah, my bad. It's like, whoops. And then after that, it was fine. So the guys who were just my friends, they were like, all right, cool, that's fine, no worries. The guys who thought there was a little something more going on, it was awkward longer, and then it was fine. After that, they realized, like, all right,
They got over themselves.
yeah, pretty much, like,
so they respected it, right?
Yeah.
There wasn't too much pushback. Okay.
Yeah. I think for you it's probably harder because you're more social than I am, and I wasn't. So I already gave off of that vibe,
Don't
I
touch me
guess,
vibe.
of like I don't care, like about like. But I think the hardest thing was for me because I'm anti-social, but when I finally was comfortable with you, I do want to give you affection because I'm actually comfortable around you, and I actually feel safe to an extent with you. So I was like, and it wasn't necessarily like hugs or anything, but it was just, you know, like being really close to each other when we're sitting down, like just like our shoulders touching. Like the fact that I let you that close was like a big deal for me. Like to me, like that means I trust you. So like eventually, obviously being that close, eventually at first it was just shoulders, and then it was like him putting his arm like on my shoulder, and then eventually it was his arms around me, and then eventually it would turn into hugs. But to me, like it was more of a deeper meaning for me. So it was hard when I finally got to that extent to be like, to still say no. But I think it wasn't too, like, they kind of understood because I really wasn't like physically affectionate. And so, like, and I had a few times where people would, you know, they're hugging everybody. You know, you say your goodbyes or your highs and you're hugging everyone. And then they'd come to me, like, their hand midair, and they're like, can I hug you? And I'd have to be like, no, you can't. Like, no, you can't hug me. But they were okay with it. For the most part, they didn't, like, it was set from the beginning, like, from the very, very beginning.
you need my permission.
Like, you need my permission to touch me, because I didn't give very many, like, everybody that, when it came to girls, I would, because I just feel like girls are just more affectionate anyways, and I didn't want to feel like, I felt like almost disrespectful if you're, like, really affectionate, you want to hug me, and I'm like, oh, like, I still would cringe up, but, like, I would let you because, like, okay, they're affectionate, and that's just how they are, but that's not how I am. And so I am more like that now. But in high school, I wasn't. I was very antisocial. But for the most part, when it came to guys anyways, they were pretty respectful of that. And they were pretty okay with it. And then, like, I think they would, like, it was like walking around eggshells when they would, like, get close to me. Because, like, you could feel, like, because I just, like, Sarah has, like, a really small itty-bitty bubble just in general. Yeah, you can be, like, breathing down her neck, and she wouldn't. notice, but I will feel you like 10 feet away, like you're staring. I can feel it. And so it was easier for me only because I'm just not affectionate. But for the most part, guys would respect it. And I didn't have the issue, I guess, that much. But I think the part I had the issue most was when they would talk to me, how they would talk to me. That's where I had to set the boundaries up right there. Like, you don't joke around like that with me. Like, I don't care about your perverted jokes. I don't care about how many chicks you've been with. I don't care. Like, I don't want you talking to me like that. Like, because I like, and also it changed my view of you. Like, dude, you're like perverted. Like, like
You're gross. Ew.
like, but that's where I had to like, or like they try and, you know, get deep with me, but I don't want them to like, I'm not your girlfriend. I'm not your, like, yes, I'm your friend, but I think there's just some things that you shouldn't talk
To me about.
to me about. I'm like, I'm a girl, in case you forgot. don't, you know, you should probably talk to a guy about that if you're having those issues and stuff, like. So that's why I had to set up the boundaries. But yeah, it is, when it comes to touch, you do have to be really, don't touch me, or
Up
just
front.
like, just, yeah, I'm sorry. You could just be I'm sorry, I'm just not comfortable with hugs. I'm not, sorry. Or like, you know, hey, like sometimes, you know, because they could be affectionate and like, you know, Sammy said, like, from their side it means more, but like from our side you're like, oh, that's just, he's just affectionate.
Yeah.
You know? He's just
Well, and I don't know, from my background, I guess culturally, when you go somewhere like from a Hispanic background, Mexican background, everyone's really affectionate. Yeah. You hug everybody. When you go to a party, you hug everybody. So I never had those boundaries, and I didn't know how to set them up. I was really, so I have a big bubble too. But like family members, I just go hug them. And then as I got to know you, I'd hug you, but I kind of was distant. You know, everyone thought like I hated them or I was dogging them or, you know, whatever. But I guess culturally it's hard too when you come from a background to set those boundaries, because you're so used to going somewhere and greeting as
just,
a hug.
yeah, your greeting is not a
Yeah.
handshake, but it's a hug.
It's a hug. Or,
Yeah.
you know, they kiss you on cheek, like each
And the
cheek.
cheeks, yeah.
So that's kind of hard. Like culturally, I guess it's kind of hard because you have to set those boundaries. Like,
And they might see as that's disrespectful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How dare you?
Yeah, but at the most part, if they're truly your friend or family, they'll respect that. They might get mad at first, like, "What's your problem?" You know, but like, they'll eventually understand. Hopefully.
And I think it's like we were talking about earlier. When you let somebody touch you, you're giving them permission.
You're opening a door.
You're opening a door, and you're agreeing to something that maybe you don't realize you're agreeing to.
But you are agreeing.
But the guy thinks something else. You know, and I think that's the biggest difference. You know, you might take it a certain way as a girl.
As it's just a hug.
Yeah, as it just a friendly hug, but a guy's taking it as, well, there's my door.
Yeah, like what I was saying, because it doesn't start off with a hug.
Yeah.
Like it started off with, we're just sitting really close to each other.
Yeah.
And then it turns into, you know, putting his hand like on my head.
Yeah.
Or like on my shoulder. Like just for a few longer seconds.
Yeah.
And then it eventually does turn into a hug. And first it's just like a quick side hug.
Yeah.
And then it turns into like a frontal hug and stuff. And then eventually you're like holding each other and like,
For all eternity.
yeah, and you're like, yeah. How did we get here?
Yeah. And that's the thing about, somebody's always going to test those boundaries. Someone's always going to push those boundaries, you know. And that's where you have to like make that mental, you know, okay, this is, okay, you crossed the line, you know. And I don't know like where the line was for you guys, you know, like, you know, I'm not sure, you
Like,
know.
what do you mean?
Like, where was the line? Was this the line? You know, was this the line? You know, like how, you know, like,
I'm trying to
yeah.
Yeah. Honestly,
Yeah.
like if another thing is being alone with each other for a long period of time.
It's so easy to cross those lines when
That's
you're
when I
alone
was like,
with them
no,
for
no,
a
no,
really
no.
long time.
Yeah, because then you start sharing information.
Yeah.
Or how you're saying, like, don't talk to me about
Yeah,
that
you're
stuff.
crossing different
Yeah.
boundaries. It's not just touch anymore. It's like emotional boundaries now and everything.
Well, even like that brings me to like when I was working at Subway. It was like when I first started. I was like 16, and like my boss had the assistant manager take me home, and it was like a 1-minute ride pretty much. And but like I would like talk to him, and like I would like not open up, but like just be more friendly with him. And I don't know if he saw that like as like oh hey, this is my ticket. So like whenever I agreed to him taking me home, because usually I would just walk, but they didn't want me walking in the dark. So so like he started like driving, and we were living in Corrales. It's like a little, I don't want to say rural town. It's like
On the outskirts of Albuquerque.
yeah,
It's far.
pretty, yeah. So like it would go he started to drive further into Corrales. Like he passed my house, and like I was just kind of like, well, where are you going? And he's like, well, I want to show you something. And I'm like, show me what? I'm like, I want to go home. Like you need to turn around. Like, so like he took that as, oh, okay. Like, but like just the fact that he thought that he could drive as far as wherever the heck he was gonna
You guys
go.
could go for a drive.
Yeah, and I was like, ew, dude, like you're gross. And I don't like you that way.
That's creepy that he didn't tell you.
Yeah.
I would have
Like
been
murder
like,
vibes.
yeah, that's what I would have thought. Like, oh my god, this person's gonna kill me.
So like boundaries, like it just, I didn't have any, I guess, as a sense, because like I would just get into like random cars with strangers. Like I was like, well, I don't want to walk anymore. Like he's offering to take me somewhere, like I can get to work faster. And like so it turned into like this guy thinking that I was a worker of the streets. Yes, a worker of the streets. And so he was, because I told him, like, I'm going to work, and I had my subway uniform on, like, but I guess he thought going to work, I'm going to work. So I was just like, so he started saying stuff like, how much for this, how much for that? And like, I had my hand on the handle, and and he was like, oh, no, it's fine. And so I was like, no, it's not fine. I was like, you need to drop me off now. I'll walk the rest of the way. So like after that, that's when it clicked. Like, oh, I couldn't
I
get
can't just get in a car with
with
strangers.
just anybody, like. So as far as boundaries,
How are you alive?
Yeah.
God. That's right.
You weren't protecting yourself. And one other thing too, I think especially for girls, is that touch, it brings up like emotions, And the thing is, you can't trust your emotions. Your emotions are gonna take you up and down and everywhere, and so you can't, just because it makes you feel, the
Emotions
goosebumps.
change with the song.
Yeah.
like that saying, follow your heart. And it's like, now when I hear that, I'm like, the heart is deceitful above all things. Just like,
Yeah. So you can't rely on your emotions, and so that's the whole thing, is that, when you get to that place where you're letting somebody cross that touch, you're also involved, your emotions get involved, and you can't rely on your emotions. Your emotions are going to lie to you, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
well, it's like we said, like when it comes to touch, we said it last time about how you get the giggles, when guys, the butterflies, when guys are touching you a certain way. But it's like you said earlier, it's an open door for them. For us, we're just like, ooh, ooh, but it's an open door to keep going past that boundary. Because like you said, it's like you open the gate and then they're like, yeah, here we go. But for us, it's just hugs. It's not though.
And sometimes we know what we're doing.
Oh, yeah.
too,
I did. I knew what I was doing. Like, I was like, well, I like him, so.
I'll let him cross those boundaries.
And really, it's, you like the way he makes you feel.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because you didn't know nothing about him, but
he didn't have no job.
Yeah,
he didn't have no
yeah.
house. Like, we're
Yeah.
still kids. Like,
yeah, and it's like just ending it on that is that boundary is going to protect you, and it's going to keep things from happening later, from you going into a disaster. Because I'm sure just by setting boundaries, you're going to avoid a lot of just hurts, and and then you kind of get to control,
Who's in your life.
Yeah, who's in your life, and
Yeah.
so I think we're done
That's
with
it.
that for this part,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we'll end there. And next episode, we'll talk about a different boundary this time.
We
Thank you.
promise that's the last.
Yeah.
of
the
the
last
touch.
one about touch.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye. Thanks for listening. Join us for our next podcast. You can contact us through Instagram at podcast412 or email us at 412fight@gmail.com. See you next time.